It's May the 4th be with you, which means nerds and geeks everywhere are talking about the Star Wars franchise. Hi, my name's Zach, and today we're going to rank all theatrically released Star Wars films from the worst to the best. Before we get started, I started this YouTube channel because I could not watch a movie without needing to talk about it afterwards. If that sounds like you, you're in the right place. Consider hitting that subscribe button. Also, I want this to be a dialogue, a conversation between me and you, so give me your ranking of all theatrically released Star Wars films down in the comment section below. Give me some context of when you first saw Star Wars. Are you a newer viewer? Are you an older viewer? Were you there all the way from the start? Comment down below. I'd love to hear your story. Let's get started with my ranking. In last place, Star Wars The Clone Wars, the animated 2008 film that was theatrically released and feels like it was theatrically released to milk some money out of the Star Wars fans, as well as promote the Clone Wars TV series that was on Cartoon Network. This movie is just not very good. It's not very good, and it almost doesn't even count in the main canon run of Star Wars. When people talk about Star Wars movies, they almost never talk about Star Wars The Clone Wars. It's a very cheap looking made animated film at the time. Even in 2008, the animation here isn't particularly that impressive, especially to be put in theaters. The story here feels like a special episode that should be on the TV show rather than on the big screen in the theaters, with Anakin and Obi-Wan trying to get Jabba's son and all these kiddie shenanigans going on with them. It's a film in Star Wars that is better forgotten than remembered. I'm sure kids at the time, which it's clearly aimed at the kids who they were aimed to get to watch Clone Wars on Cartoon Network, I'm sure they really enjoyed it. I was 9 years old. I was a kid in 2008. I've never enjoyed this. I've never seen this as real Star Wars. Not saying the Clone Wars TV series isn't. There's some pretty good arcs in the show. When it comes to the Clone Wars movie, big giant fart on the franchise. Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, a disappointing finale to a disappointing trilogy. When it came to The Last Jedi, all the decisions that Rian Johnson made in that film that was clearly not where J.J. Abrams was going to go after The Force Awakens. The question with Rise of Skywalker was, are they going to run with the decisions that Rian Johnson made, or are they going to run away from the decisions that Rian Johnson decided to make? And instead of being a cohesive narrative coming off of Rian Johnson's, they brought back J.J. Abrams, and it feels like J.J. Abrams was like, Rian Johnson took away everything I was trying to do. And the movies just become a tug of war with each other, where The Last Jedi is pulling one way and The Rise of Skywalker pulls the other way, where you feel like you don't make any ground moving forward. Where Rise of Skywalker decided to just go for fan service. They just were trying to be the fun, action-packed Star Wars film again. But after you deconstruct everything with Last Jedi the way that Last Jedi did, it's hard to get back to that place. So, what do? You bring back Emperor Palpatine. How? Somehow. Terrible line of all of cinema. You have these characters who went in one way in the last film and go a completely opposite way in the other film, where it feels completely unnatural to the characters themselves, where we just came off with them. It is clearly made by a studio in disarray. It's a studio that's panicking, freaking out, hitting that button. How do we fix this? How do we fix this? And the way that they went about to fix it with The Rise of Skywalker, I thought just made for a messy, incoherently made film, to the point that by the end of the film, when you've got all those starships rising up from the Emperor with the Last Order, whatever it was called, it's like, how did Emperor Palpatine do that? How was he able to do that? How, for that matter, how was he able to come back? They just throw out a line from Revenge of the Sith for nostalgia's sake to try to make you forget that Emperor Palpatine shouldn't be here. And it's a film that, to me, insults the audience, insults the Star Wars audience. Does it look great? Of course. It's Disney. They've got all the money in the world. They can make a film look great. The action's kind of fun. Sure. But when it comes to the important stuff of a story, character, and especially in a trilogy where you're trying to wrap up an overarching story of multiple characters, multiple storylines, they just didn't have this sequel trilogy set up for success. That the Rise of Skywalker was just in a very bad position when it came out. I don't give J.J. Abrams any gruff for it. I give all the leadership at Lucasfilm gruff for it. They should have had a plan going forward after Force Awakens. They didn't. And we got a very disappointing sequel trilogy. And Rise of Skywalker was just a very disappointing cherry at the top of it. Kicking off our top 10, Solo, a Star Wars story. And I find myself in the minority when it comes to a lot of fans, because a lot of fans, they find this very acceptable as a Star Wars film. It's a fun little space adventure for a lot of them. Maybe that's you. Maybe you do enjoy this film. I've never really enjoyed this film. I've always seen this film as a glorified kind of fan fiction type film where it's very highly publicized that Lord and Miller were the ones working on Solo at the start of it. Halfway through production, Kathleen Kennedy found out that they weren't making this film that they agreed on. I guess they were making it a little bit more goofier. The quote that Kathleen Kennedy used was, it was very Ace Ventura-like, which I love Lord and Miller, but if that's true, I don't know if I want to see that in Star Wars. So she canned Lord and Miller, brought in her friend Ron Howard, and they decided to go and make a very safe Star Wars story. And that's kind of how Solo feels to me. It feels very safe. And in its safeness, it feels like there was no risks and no boldness made when it came to telling a story with Han Solo. I think Alden Ehrenreich is fine as Han Solo. I think that Donald Glover as Lando definitely overshadows him in this film. But when it comes to the story of this, I find it to be a very generic, forgettable story within the Star Wars universe. I don't find many of the characters to be all that memorable or compelling. I'm personally not a fan of how the film looks. I think it has a very ugly color grading where it's gray and washed out. It doesn't feel vibrant. It doesn't feel like a lived-in Star Wars universe to me. Granted, they are telling a smuggler story, a more underground criminal story in the Star Wars universe, so you could make the argument that that works for the tone of the film. But for me, I just find it to be a very ugly movie to look at. On top of that, there's a lot of decisions in here made with the Han Solo character that don't feel consistent with the Han Solo character that Harrison Ford played. It does not feel to me at any time that this Han Solo is going to grow into the Harrison Ford Han Solo. And they also give Han Solo's character kind of the same arc that Han Solo is supposed to have in A New Hope. So in that way, they just kind of repeat an arc that the character already has, but is supposed to have like a couple years down the road from here. To me, it's just a movie where they played it safe. It feels that way, and in that way, it's just a forgettable Star Wars little side quest to me. I don't really plan on revisiting anytime soon. And truth be told, I was mentally checked out the minute I saw how they gave Han Solo his name in this film.
I don't have people. I'm alone.
Solo.
Now let's talk about the most polarizing of all the Star Wars films, Star Wars The Last Jedi. When this film came out, you had a bunch of people on one side who loved it. You had a bunch of people on the other side who hated it. It completely split the audience down the middle. We've never been able to come back into the aisle since. Where do I land on it? When I first saw it, I wasn't quite sure how I felt about it. A couple years went by. I've rewatched it a couple times. I like the parts with Rey and Luke a little bit more than I like the chase going on with Kylo Ren and the First Order and all those, and Poe and Finn and all those guys over there. I always found some stuff going on with Rey and Luke and Luke's distaste for the Jedi and why to be a little bit fascinating and a little bit more interesting than the second half of the film. But as time goes on, this Star Wars movie ages like milk. As I go back to revisit The Last Jedi, I just find that I don't enjoy it very much. Where The Force Awakens back in 2015, when that came out, that was all set on just remember the fun of Star Wars. Remember when Star Wars came out in 1977, how fun it was, the space fantasy adventure, the fun characters, the action, all of that. When you get to The Last Jedi, it feels like Rian Johnson is reminding you, hey, you're grown-ups now. Let's deconstruct all these things that you were told to believe as kids, and let's bring them down to a more nihilistic level, basically. And that's just not fun in Star Wars for me. And it feels like Rian Johnson is telling me that all this stuff I like about Star Wars, I shouldn't like about Star Wars. And we need to really evaluate this and look at it. And I don't want to do that. I just want to go to the space fantasy adventure world. I just want to hang out with these characters I love. I want to have lightsaber battles. I want to have space battles. Why would you take away my enjoyment in the film that I just want to come for escapism and fun? On top of that, I think that this being the longest Star Wars movie to date is totally unjustified, as a lot of the plot lines going on in here could be cut. Finn and Rose's plotline in particular completely cut everything going on that casino planet. Poe's storyline with Holdo and Leia could have been trimmed down so much more than it was in this film. Put the focus on Rey and Luke and give us more of that going on. But there's just too much going on in this film where it clearly doesn't respect or want to carry on at all what J.J. Abrams had set up in Force Awakens, particularly when it comes to the character of Snoke, where it feels like this was in the midst of the culture of fan speculation and fan theories, where not just fans being fans amongst themselves, but these fan theories and speculations got so big through the internet, through YouTube videos, that actually reached the creatives, that actually reached the stars. People knew what the fans were speculating and talking about, and it felt like Rian Johnson just wanted to pull one over on the fans, killed Snoke, killed all the theories, killed all the mystery, killed all of the interest going forward, as The Last Jedi kind of takes a lot of what J.J. Abrams set up, kind of wraps it all up by the end of the film in a way where you kind of go, what are they going to do next with this film? And it was clear that the filmmakers and those behind the series of Star Wars at Lucasfilm at this point also thought, what are we going to do next with these films? Then we got The Rise of Skywalker. And it's all because they just didn't have a plan for this trilogy. And for that reason, when I go back to The Last Jedi, I just feel like this is the film that killed all momentum that the sequel trilogy had going for it. And it's just a bummer of a rewatch.
And yes, you still haven't seen Attack of the Clones from me yet.
Up next, Star Wars The Phantom Menace, one of the most anticipated movies of all time. Also one of the greatest disappointments of all times, where in Star Wars, it feels like George Lucas is pulling from things he enjoys in life, like fantasy and mythology, Flash Gordon, and serials. When it comes to The Phantom Menace, it feels like George Lucas was in a little bit of a political place in his life, or maybe he wanted to voice his opinions on some of the world leaders going on at that time. I don't know, because The Phantom Menace is very odd when it comes to Star Wars. It feels like in a lot of ways George Lucas lost the plot. He lost what people enjoyed about Star Wars. We don't come for trade negotiations and talking in circles, these monks. There's just a lot of odd choices found in The Phantom Menace, especially when you compare it to the previous trilogy. There are some things that I do quite enjoy in The Phantom Menace as well. Everything that happens on Tatooine when Qui-Gon Jinn is finding Anakin Skywalker, I personally really love all that. I love that story of Anakin having to leave his mother to become a Jedi, the toll that is on Anakin. There's a really great goodbye sequence that goes on between Anakin and his mom as he has to leave and go with Qui-Gon. It's honestly pretty heartbreaking to watch whenever I go back and rewatch The Phantom Menace. Of course, you've got the pod racing sequence in here, which is a pretty fun sequence and was very innovative when it first came out in 1999. The effects for it and the CGI also hold up incredibly well. ILM did a phenomenal job in that sequence. Of course, Darth Maul fight at the end of this with Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Very fun fight. Everything else surrounding this film is really just a big question mark on why did George Lucas think this is what Star Wars fans wanted? Why did he think we wanted so much political talk? Why did he think we wanted to see a 9-year-old get together with what was she, like 14, 15-year-old Natalie Portman? Just very odd decisions in the Phantom Menace, even though I'm a fan of the Anakin and Padme romance. We'll talk about that later. But very odd decisions nonetheless that come out of the Phantom Menace. I don't think the Phantom Menace is a complete train wreck. I don't think it's an awful Star Wars film. There are parts of it I do enjoy, but there's also a lot of parts in it that I skip whenever I do a rewatch of the film. Star Wars Attack of the Clones, an unpopular opinion, as I am a little bit of a defender of this film. Do I think it's a great film? No. But I think there are great things in it. And while I think the execution gets muddled and messy, isn't done very well, it ruins those great things. It doesn't help that I can still see the great things in it. When it comes to Anakin Skywalker's character, particularly in this film, I've always resonated with his frustration. The way that Hayden Christensen acts that frustration isn't always the greatest at times, but when you look at this character that from a Phantom Menace was taken as a child at 9 years old by Qui-Gon Jinn, told he was going to be this great thing, and he grows up in this environment where he's told he's got this great potential, and the entire time he's there, he's not allowed to live up to what he believes he can. Also, the romance that comes between him and Padme, I do find sweet. Do Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman have the best chemistry all the time? No, they don't. But there are moments there where I do find their relationship kind of cute. I do find that they have some fun chemistry to them. Everything involving Anakin and his mom, again, coming off of Phantom Menace after that departure that they had, saying goodbye. When he finds out she's been taken by the Tusken Raiders, he goes to try to save her, loses her, and then takes his rage out on the Tusken Raiders. I think there's some really great stuff to come out of all those sequences that leads into Revenge of the Sith, as that becomes Anakin's main motivator for going to the dark side, is the fact that he has lost the love of his life. He can't lose another one. We'll talk more about that, I'm sure, in a minute here. Also, Hugh McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I always love seeing him on screen as Obi-Wan Kenobi. The fact that he's got this little side quest going on in the background of this film. I enjoy Hugh McGregor doing his little investigation, finding everything out about the clones, even if it's kind of dumb, not that smartly written of an investigation as it could be. There's also some fun lightsaber battles in here. The whole battle taking place on Geonosis with all of the Jedi taking out all of the droids. Have a lot of fun with that. There's also a lot that holds the Attack of the Clones back from being great. The dialogue's not great. I do feel like as much as I enjoy the Geonosis scene, as soon as that scene ends, this movie overstays its welcome. I get kind of bored. I think the Count Dooku fight at the end with Anakin is probably the worst lightsaber fight that's ever occurred in Star Wars. The Yoda fight between Count Dooku is fun, though, and the movie is just really long. Too much plots, too much going on. And in the second movie of a trilogy where we're trying to tell the story of how Anakin Skywalker goes to the dark side, becomes Darth Vader, they spend way too much time in Attack of the Clones on non-necessary things that make that story feel like it's not being pushed as far as it should be by the time we're at the second film in the trilogy. So, Attack of the Clones, I get everyone's complaints. I understand if you personally have it at the very bottom of your list. For me, I've always been able to find little nuggets of greatness, or at least goodness, in this one that puts it above a Phantom Menace for me personally, and I'm a little bit of a defender of it. But I'll still never say it's a great movie. Star Wars Return of the Jedi, ironically my least favorite of the original trilogy today, was my favorite of the original trilogy as a kid. Because there's no denying that Return of the Jedi, what it has going for it, is a fantastic beginning and a phenomenal ending. Where the film begins, you're at Jabba's palace, you're trying to rescue Han Solo. Luke Skywalker looks like he's been captured, they're taking him to the Sarlacc pit. Boom, big battle breaks out. It's like the first half an hour of the film is just this epic kind of side quest in and of itself of Luke and all the characters, Leia, Lando, trying to rescue their friend Han and getting the one-up over Jabba the Hutt, who you've heard about over the entire trilogy. If you watched the special edition, you saw him in New Hope, but I had just Star Wars on the VHS as a kid, so I did not see Jabba the Hutt in A New Hope. I saw Jabba the Hutt for the first time, as it should be seen, in Return of the Jedi. It wraps up that storyline that's been sprinkled out throughout the entire trilogy so nicely. Then when you get to the climax of the film, the redemption of Darth Vader is done so incredibly well, with not just the battle going on between Luke and Vader as the Emperor is taunting Luke, trying to get him to break and join the dark side of the Force. That was a terrible Palpatine. But when you do get to that moment where Darth Vader saves his son, throws the Emperor over that shaft, he falls down, blows up, the Death Star blows up, we lose Darth Vader with it. It's such a poignant, satisfying ending to the character of Darth Vader, where you feel, even in the original trilogy in itself, you feel the complete arc of Darth Vader come around. You feel Luke step into his own as a Jedi at this point. I love the beginning. I love the end. It's that middle section as I've gotten older that has really worn on me, where when it comes to Empire Strikes Back, which is the film before this, I feel like that was my least favorite as a kid, because as I've gotten older, as a kid, I wasn't able to appreciate the nuances, the spirituality that's being introduced and the mythology and the lore that's being introduced in The Empire Strikes Back. As a kid, it was a little bit of a slower burn for me. As an adult, I love it more. We'll talk about more of that in a minute. But in Return of the Jedi, when it comes to that whole section on Endor with the Ewoks, as a kid, I thought the Ewoks were cute and adorable, and it was kind of fun. I love the biker speed chase that goes on in the forest. I still enjoy that to this day. But nowadays, when I get to the section in the middle of this film of Endor, I feel the film slows way down. It gets a little bit goofier. It gets a little bit more kiddie, let's be honest, than Empire and Star Wars did, where those were kid-friendly films. Both kids and adults were able to enjoy Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back on the same level. Return of the Jedi does feel like, especially in that second act on Endor, it's aiming specifically for the younger crowd. The beginning, the end, totally on par. Kids, adults can enjoy that equally. It's that middle section that, as I've gotten older, has just gotten a little bit slower, a little worse for me. So I still enjoy Return of the Jedi. I think overall it's still a fantastic ending to the original trilogy. But what was once my favorite of the original trilogy, and my favorite Star Wars in general as a kid, it's down to my least favorite of the original trilogy. But it's still enjoyable. Bringing us into the top 5, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. Highly regarded as the best Star Wars movie to come out of the Disney era. I don't necessarily agree with that. I do prefer The Force Awakens over Rogue One, as you'll see in a minute here. But when it comes to Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, I've always enjoyed this film. And it's a movie that I feel like has gotten better as it has aged, and as Star Wars has aged, because Star Wars has only gotten worse since Rogue One came out. What I like about what they do with this film is they take a line that was said in the original crawl of the original Star Wars film, and they take that line to flesh out the story of the rebellion. And Rogue One doesn't shy away from showing you just how brutal of a fight the rebels had against the Empire during the time of A New Hope. And what's really cool about Rogue One is getting those inside looks at the Empire that we didn't get to see going on during Star Wars. The looks at the rebellion, at the rebels, the more grounded on the street level of Star Wars like we've never seen before, while also still having big, huge scope and battles and space battles going on throughout the narrative. When it comes to the characters in Rogue One, I've always felt like the abundance of characters was always kind of the weakness of Rogue One, where looking at the politics, looking at the Empire, getting a behind-the-scenes look at the true evil that they are doing around the galaxy at this time, that is the most compelling. When they put the wars in Star Wars, that's the most compelling part for me of Rogue One. The characters always felt a little underdeveloped and not very fleshed out to me, that I never really cared that much about many of them. Now, with Andor streaming on Disney Plus, that is doing a lot to turn that around for me. It's actually making Rogue One age a lot better, and the character of Andor in particular, who I really didn't care that much about in Rogue One when it first came out, That character has grown so much more since this film came out, and his series has only worked to benefit Rogue One, where I can't wait to see where Season 2 leads and where Season 2 leads off. I feel like it's going to enhance Rogue One even more than it already has. But, I mean, the Darth Vader inclusion in Rogue One, giving us perhaps the best Vader scene of all of Star Wars when he takes down that hallway of Rebels leading to the beginning of A New Hope. What Gareth Edwards was able to do, what Tony Gilroy was able to do with Rogue One, is they gave a Star Wars film to the Star Wars fans that at the time was fan service, while also expanding and fleshing out our already known Star Wars universe in a way that was compelling, interesting, and fun. Star Wars The Force Awakens. And as I wasn't alive for The Phantom Menace, this is one of the most hyped and most anticipated films I'd ever seen in my lifetime. Star Wars was coming back under the Disney banner, but was it gonna be good? For me, yeah. Star Wars The Force Awakens was pretty good because it was clear that what J.J. Abrams and team were trying to do, they were trying to go back to Star Wars A New Hope. They were trying to recapture this just being a space fantasy film full of action, full of excitement, with now heightened effects, more innovative filmmaking, more budget to the film going on. So while this movie is a little bit of a recap, a remake of A New Hope and some of the greatest moments of the Star Wars original trilogy, I enjoy all of that in Star Wars. I think the introductions of Finn and Rey in this film in particular are very good. They're very interesting characters. They have a very fun interplay going on throughout the film. You throw in Han Solo into the mix with these two as well. Just makes for a fun trio as we go through the galaxy. I love the character of Kylo Ren introduced in this film. The idea of a character who was on the dark side but feeling pulled to the light side and resisting it was such a new and twist idea in the Star Wars lore and movies up until this point. The action in it, like I said, is just fun. The movie's main concern is to just bring fun back to Star Wars, and when it came out in 2014, I feel like it accomplished that goal. And when I go back and watch The Force Awakens today, I still have fun with it. I still enjoy the ride. Granted, this one is a little bit hurt by the end of it because I know where it goes and where it ended up going. I wasn't a particular fan of, and it's very disappointing that they didn't plot out these films when they first came up with the concept for Force Awakens. Hey, you think we should figure out where this is going to go in the future? Nah. Biggest mistake, second biggest mistake of Star Wars. The first being never having Han, Luke, and Leia on the screen together. Of course, they couldn't know what was going to happen with the untimely passing of Carrie Fisher and all that. Still, bonehead move not to have them have at least one scene in this film. Bonehead move to not plan a trilogy of actual narrative of where they were going to go past this film. Just judging this film on its own merits, I quite enjoy it, but I will admit I enjoyed it a little bit less knowing what came after it. Which brings us to our top 3, which is going to kick off with Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, a Star Wars movie that pretty much has all the flaws and the faults of the previous films in the prequel trilogy, but at the same time does what it needs to do to make me love it. Because while Revenge of the Sith still has some clunky dialogue, it still has some moments where there's more going on in the story than is necessary, that is distracting and taken away from the central story we're here to see of Anakin Skywalker becoming Darth Vader. As someone who likes to see where the Anakin character is going in Attack of the Clones, the way that his arc wraps up in Revenge of the Sith, I think is actually really good, really emotionally compelling, because in Attack of the Clones, when he's having those visions about his mother dying and eventually he's unable to save her, she does die. As those visions start to happen with Padme, as he's just learned that she's pregnant, he's starting to put all of these doubts in the Jedi that is being fed to him by Palpatine, that when it comes to his turn of Darth Vader with the promise that Palpatine could save the one that he loves in Padme, as if he becomes part of the dark side, He falls into it. He falls into the temptation. The dark side has a hold on him. He's now Palpatine's puppet, and he becomes Darth Vader. The way that they are able to tell that story throughout Revenge of the Sith is my favorite part of Revenge of the Sith. The stuff that goes on with Obi-Wan Kenobi in the background, with General Grievous, is fun. Like I said, I love seeing Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan on screen, so I'll take a side quest with him, even if it distracts a little bit. Order 66 is also a very devastating sequence as Palpatine's plan finally comes into place and the clones turn on all the Jedi. The massacre, the genocide that takes place during that sequence, you really do feel it. George Lucas does a good job of letting the emotions of that moment resonate with you. They also do a good job at the beginning of the film kind of repairing the mistakes they made between Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship in Attack of the Clones, where they do have camaraderie. They do come across as friends at the beginning of the film as they're going off to rescue Chancellor Palpatine, to the point that at the end on the planet of Mustafar, after they've had their epic lightsaber battle, when Obi-Wan looks at Anakin as he's burning to death, so he thinks, and says, "You are my brother, I love you," those words resonate. I feel them. The prequel trilogy is a bumpy ride. It doesn't do everything exactly right, but the moments that they get right really do work for me. And Revenge of the Sith is the crowning jewel of the prequel trilogy. I will happily go back and rewatch Revenge of the Sith anytime, anywhere. I love the color palette of this film. I love the lightsaber battles. I love the conflicts going on between all the characters. And as this wraps up and we get Hayden Christensen in that Darth Vader suit, and we're setting the stage of where the original trilogy takes off, as a fan, I feel emotionally satisfied. Despite how bumpy the road was to get there, once we get there, I'm happy. And for our runner-up, we're going to go with Star Wars A New Hope, or just Star Wars as it was called back in the day, and on my VHS tape, as I'm sure it was for a lot of you guys as well. And really, this is the film why we have May the 4th as Star Wars Day. It was such a culturally impactful phenomenon that obviously I was not alive for, but is still impacting generations as it impacted my generation before it and many, many, many generations before that. It is basically, when you boil it down, it is George Lucas's interest in one frame, where he took from all this fantasy and mythology and religion stuff that he was interested in. You got the old serials he used to watch as a kid. You've got Flash Gordon, which was a big influence as well on this film. You got all these elements of George Lucas's life, basically, that he took inspiration from, put them all together, blended these genres, and then put it on the screen as Star Wars. And it was one of those films that, as a kid, for me personally, as I'm sure it was when it first came out, was mind-blowing. Like there was nothing else on any VHS tape that I owned that was like Star Wars, where the adventure here is just so full of excitement and life, and the characters here are so memorable, and they're dynamic. Han, Luke, Leia, Chewbacca, C-3PO, R2-D2, Darth Vader, they all have such memorable moments and character traits and interactions with each other that while this is a fun fantasy adventure film with lightsabers, laser swords, and laser beams and guns shooting lasers, there's also just this inherent hero's journey with the Luke Skywalker character that is just so relatable as a kid, as it is as an adult. As a film lover, as a filmmaker lover, I just love all the practical effects in this film. This film has only gotten better for me as I've gotten older, and I've learned more as what's gone into making Star Wars. The Light and Magic documentary series that they put out on Disney Plus a few years back, they've got a season 2 out right now, where they kind of went deep dive into what ILM had to do to create the effects. These innovative and groundbreaking cinematic effects that still hold up for the majority to this day is so impressive. The story is so fun. The characters are so fun. Even all these years later, Star Wars A New Hope, or we'll just call it Star Wars, is still one of the best Star Wars has ever given us. which is going to bring us to our number one, Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. And as much as Star Wars is, of course, the phenomenon, the cultural impact that it had in 77, that makes May the 4th Star Wars Day, I can't help but feel that The Empire Strikes Back almost needs a little bit more credit to why we have May the 4th and why we still have Star Wars to this day. Because where Star Wars was this fun adventure space fantasy, what The Empire Strikes Back did was it took all of those elements, all of the fantasy and serial and Flash Gordon and genres that George Lucas blended together, and they refined it, and they were able to go deeper into their mythology of Star Wars, where this does go deeper into what is the Force, what is the Jedi, as Luke goes off to be trained as a Jedi. We get a deeper look spiritually as to what is a Jedi when we get introduced to yet another iconic character of Yoda in this film. This film is also very brave at the time and still to this day, how it doesn't just redo Star Wars. It really does take these characters to a completely new place, takes the franchise in a new direction. It goes deeper into the lore. It goes deeper into these characters where you've got Han and Leia separated from Luke as Luke is diving deeper into his insecurities as he's trying to train to be a Jedi with Yoda. You've got Han and Leia exploring their romantic chemistry while they're trying to flee from the Empire. Speaking of the Empire, this is the film that to me makes Darth Vader Darth Vader, because in Star Wars, Darth Vader is of course there. He's intimidating. He's kind of a glorified bodyguard when you really look at his role in Star Wars. Empire Strikes Back, he's the villain. He's front and center. He's force choking fools left and right. There's no messing around with Darth Vader in this film, to the point that by the end of this film, they actually let Darth Vader beat our hero Luke Skywalker. It was one of the most crazy things as a kid when Luke gets his hand chopped off. He falls down, gets picked up, but the heroes, they lose Han Solo. They don't win this time around. They had the confidence to leave the audience there for 3 years back in 1980. For me, I was fortunate enough, I just popped in Return of the Jedi as soon as this film ended, but it leaves you with this sense of defeat with so many questions left over, from the I am your father iconic moment to there is another. There's so much that Empire Strikes Back does, where it shows the confidence that Star Wars had at the time, where they knew they were going to get to fulfill all of these mysteries that they leave for the audience. And I would have to kick myself, like I was kicking myself just a little bit earlier when I was talking about Star Wars, if I don't mention John Williams' score here, because there are so many iconic Star Wars scores that come from The Empire Strikes Back. The Imperial March, this is where that comes from. Han and Leia's theme, Yoda's theme. The music that John Williams does in The Empire Strikes Back is so beautiful. It's so resonating. It's so memorable that we're remembering it all these decades later, and we'll remember it for more decades to come. The Empire Strikes Back is Star Wars at its best. It's Star Wars at its peak. In my opinion, it's why Star Wars has stuck around for as long as it has. It comes in at number one. If you like videos like this, I've got a playlist right up there of other Star Wars rankings, including the TV shows and the trilogies individually. Also, down below right there is the most recently uploaded video to the channel you can check out. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't just watch movies, talk movies. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.